Hello there, good evening, and welcome to another edition of Ed Live. I'm your host, Eddie Lane, and of course, I have with me in studio Comrade Gail Teixeira. She is an executive member of the People's Progressive Party. Comrade Gail, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
All right, so tonight, we were planning to talk a little bit about young people and job opportunities, but we had to change things up because of recent developments over the past. I don't even want to say a few hours, with what is happening in our country. So let me start from the beginning. We have received information of a plot to arrest the leader of the opposition, former President Dr. Jagdeo, who is overseas at the moment, meeting with Guyanese, our supporters, and even Guyanese generally, is meeting with them, updating them on what is happening. What I'm going to do, I'm going to give Comrade Gail the opportunity to, first and foremost, talk a little bit about what we heard so far before we go into a little clip that we have, which will, I think, will give the context of tonight's discussion.
Well, good night, viewers, and we're having this program tonight to really say to you what we find a very shocking news. We have learned that there is a plot being hatched at Congress Place to have the leading opposition, the Honourable Jagdeo, Member of Parliament, be arrested on his arrival tomorrow from overseas. We understand the grounds for the arrest, and that's what we have been learning, that the newest MP of Parliament, Pilgrim, who took Mr. Charandas Prasad's name, apparently reported to the CID in Berbice after the recent Babu John activity, where Mr. Jagdeo proclaimed that when the government is illegal, that people should not be welcomed in the communities, they should be chased out, but he emphasized the issue of non-violence. And apparently this report was made by Mrs. Pilgrim, or Miss Pilgrim, and then subsequently she wrote the ERC. Our information is the ERC has not really dealt with this matter at all. And so this occurrence that the government, the Congress Place, as distinct from government, is planning and instructing the police to arrest the leading opposition is extraordinary step being taken by the government, and for me this is an example of desperation on the part of the government. But we'll talk more about that. But the issue is that here is a situation where, as far as I can remember, the leading opposition of Guyana, since independence, no leading opposition has ever been arrested, nor has there been any plan that we've ever picked up to arrest the leading opposition, whether it was Mr. Hoyt, Dr. Jagan, Mr. Jagdeo in this present situation, Mr. Corbyn,
Mr. Granger himself.
Mr. Granger himself, when he was leading the opposition. So this is in an independent country such as ours. This has never occurred. It has never even been whispered. And so this news tonight is extremely disturbing and clearly showing, as I said, the desperation of the government, which I believe is a very bad move on their part, and certainly one that will backfire. But we need to talk more about what they want to, why they're saying they want to do this. The approach to the ERC is an interesting one because the ERC hasn't done anything about it. As you know, the ERC looked into the claims by the 3 GCOM commissioners about the discrimination in the hiring and recruitment of people in Guyana Elections Commission. They took almost a year to have a consultancy and to find to have findings, however. But none of it has led to any charges or any indication that the ERC is using any strong-arm methods, which they possibly could use based on the Constitution, the Ethnic Relations Tribunal. Then you may know that I had reported during the local government elections, and with regard to Facebook comments by the mayor, the then mayor and the present mayor of Bartica in relation to a young woman who posted photographs of Mr. Jagdeo when he was visiting Bartica during the campaign, and in which he accused her and wrote into her Facebook issues that were very racist. This was reported to the ERC. Nothing has happened. We also reported to the ERC in regards to what Valda Lawrence
Yes.
said about hiring people from her own party. Those are the only ones who would get employed, and comments made by Mr. Harman. This again has led to no action in terms of the ERC and or even police. So this comment, this information we have that this Pilgrim lady has gone to the CID and that has also written to the ERC, and magically and swiftly the police are being called in to charge Mr. Jagdeo under what law we're not sure, and to also have him arrested on his arrival at Timeri tomorrow.
All right, thanks, Comrade Gail. But I just before we go, I have a short clip of what Dr. Jagdeo said and what has led to this. But I wanted first and foremost remind you that when the comment was made, because I don't know if they're going to say he's any racial incitement or anything of that sort, because the list of names that he called, there's nothing racist about that. And he was quite clear that this is after the government becomes illegal.
Yes.
And to say that when they come to you, don't listen to them, ask them to leave your community, you know. So what I'll do, I'll show this video, and when we come back, we're going to talk some more about this. And some of the very glaring cases in the government that seems to be placed on the back burner.
I noticed a statement emanating from the government today complaining about my comments at Babujan, where I said that people after March 21st should chase them out of their communities. Let me make it clear, I stand by that statement. I've made it clear at Babujan that we're a party that does not believe in violence. We're not going to be burning people's buildings. We're not going to be beating people on the streets. But the government would become illegal after March 21st. And therefore, they'd no longer be ministers. When they come to the communities, whether it is in Berbice or Essecubo or in Linden or in South Georgetown or Agricola or in Enmore or Port Morant, the people of Guyana should treat them as illegal. I said they should walk behind them, chase them out of your communities, because it means they've been squatting in power and that they will be there unconstitutionally. I made it clear, whoever they are, every minister of the government, including President Granger and Prime Minister Nagamoto, because they no longer have the right to hold those titles anymore. And so I think that they're desperate, they're worried about it, how people will treat them after March 21st, the deserved treatment that they will get after March 21st. And that's not the end of it all, because there'll be much more that will happen. If they think they can continue to stay in power, disrespect our Constitution with impunity, and act as in a normal fashion, well, they have another thing coming. So I reiterate to the people of Guyana, across Guyana, people of every race and every religion should join us in a movement to chase them out of the communities that they come to. Thank you.
So there you have it. Well, you had it. The leader of the opposition was quite clear in his message. And it's strange that that message somehow leads to anyone believing that there was any sort of incitement, you know, to bring any harm to anybody. And the fact of the matter is, Comrade Gail, is that the government was illegal for 16 hours after March 21st.
Right.
And what has been the reaction of people? You should probably talk some more about that.
Well, the court, until the Court of Appeal ruled and finished around 6 p.m. on March the 22nd, between midnight of March 21st to that period, the government was illegal. And we had protests in every single region across Guyana. Region 9 in Letham, in Region 7 Bartica, in Linden, in all across the coast, in every single one of the 10 regions. All were peaceful. Some were marches, some were demonstrations, some were picketings. All were peaceful. The police were there. The police had no problems. We were a very orderly and disciplined group, made our points about the government and the fact that elections were to be held immediately, urgently, and that the government was not abiding by the Constitution, was in violation of the Constitution. And subsequently, since March, the ruling of the Court of Appeal, and we've gone to the Caribbean Court of Justice, Mr. Jagdeo has said we will abide by the ruling of the Caribbean Court of Justice. Even if we're unhappy with it, we will abide by it. However, in the meantime, the ministers are going to visit many communities. And in some of those communities, they are faced with protest. These are persons with placards with a peaceful picket sticker on them. The police are there. No one is physically being harmed. But people are exercising right to protest the conditions under which they're living. In some cases, in the sugar working areas, it may be to do with the conditions of those communities. In other cases, they've been met by people protesting for water and roads. And so there is nothing dangerous about this. But obviously, the government is desperate. It's frightened. Its days are numbered. Whether the court rules in our favor or not. When they rule in our favor, we have elections in a few months' time. If they don't, it's one more year time. But this is what terrifies the government. And what we have to look at too, Eddie, is that here is Congress Place. What appears to be Congress Place giving instructions to the police force of this country to arrest the leading opposition, something that's never been done in this country. And so even in the days of all the violence of the 60s, you had it in the 50s when we were a British colony and the British arrested Dr. Jagger. But you never had it when anybody else was leading opposition in this country. And so we find this, and before I go on to that though, I should say that how does the government explain that they go to some areas and there are people peacefully protesting on the roadside, telling them, we don't want you here. And then you have, because when I think Valda Lawrence went to the ophthalmic center in Berbice, which was built by the PPP, and in the last 4 years has not been functioning, has become a shell of its operation. Then they suddenly went back to commission as if it's theirs. As if the community living in around and the people in Guyana don't know that the ophthalmic center was opened by the PPP, was functioning by the PPP and doing cataract surgeries. And for the last 3.5, 4 years, it hasn't functioned. Now they're going back in with some equipment, with some things, but who does it fool? And they were greeted by, she and her team were greeted by people protesting on the roadside.
Peacefully.
And nobody hurt anybody. Nobody pelt anybody. There wasn't anything burning and looting and stuff like that. And then you have their own experience in their own communities. How do they explain in their own communities that people aren't coming out to listen to them? They haven't been told by us not to go out to listen to their ministers. How do they deal with the fact that their people aren't interested in them either? And the fact that maybe they may get more picketers greeting them than supporters greeting them at some of their own meetings, because we are coming out to make our voices heard. This is all legitimate and lawful. The Constitution allows us to peacefully picket. The laws allow us to express our views, a right to express our views. But we are not to do it in a way in which it hurts other people. And so I'm very surprised that this matter raised by this newest MP, what's her name, Pilgrim, has got to this point. And clearly, as I said, the government feels that if they can target, and they have this obsession with Jagdeo. They have an absolute, I think they sleep and wake worrying about Jagdeo. And so they want to target him. And I think, I go back to Burnham's time. Burnham always, and it was viewed, and this may or may not be true, may be part of the myth of that whole period, but the view was that Burnham gave very clear instructions: don't touch Jagan. Don't ever touch Jagan. And the reason why he said that was because it would make Jagan more important than what he wanted him to be. And so this has a backlash. If this is the direction the government is, it's showing, one, that it's desperate, two, that it's prepared to undermine the whole issue of a lawful society, of a society that's democratic and has the right to express themselves. And thirdly, it is moving us more and more into a police state, into more and more confines and intimidation to try to make people follow the line. So I believe the plot is that if they can arrest Jagdeo, it will send a message to the rest of the population that you better behave yourself, because if
You
they
too
get to
can be
Jagdeo,
arrested.
you could be arrested. This is intimidation, bullyism, and undemocratic, totally undemocratic. Because in the other, of course, is that Jagdeo has done anything wrong. You heard the statement. He has been very, very judicious from December 21st to now to always be talking about that we are obeying the law, we are obeying the supreme law of our country, the Constitution, we are exercising our rights, that we are not going to be a party and never have been a party that is involved in burning and looting and stealing and beating up people and raping and stuff like that. We've never been involved. That's not the history of the People's Progressive Party. And so he was very clear in this, the clip that just was made, that we're talking about a period when the government was illegal. And it was illegal for 16 hours. And the proof of the pudding of what he said was that during those 16 hours, we had 10 huge demonstrations in 10 administrative regions of this country. Not a brick was hurt, not a dog, a cat was hurt. The police had full cooperation from the picketers. Nobody was abusive to the police. Everybody did their picketing, their chanting, and that was it. And that is totally lawful. You know, so this, I think, is, if this is the direction the Congress place is going in, they're going into some really dangerous waters for our country.
And Comrade Gail, the 16 hours, the fact of the matter is, I think, like you rightly said, that would have proven exactly what Mr. Jagdeo said.
Exactly. It upheld what he said.
Reject them. So nobody got up there and tried to injure anybody or to attack anybody or anything of that sort. But you know what is really funny in all of this is the fact that you had, and I apologize, I can't play that video with the REO of Region 3 at Congress Place calling for war against the PPP and war against Jagdeo. She said it clear. If no house-to-house registration, war against Jagdeo, and talking directly about violence in this country.
Yeah. War in all the regions.
The video's there, I have the video.
Region. Yeah.
I have the video. She's not being arrested. She's inciting violence.
Yeah.
Right? We had questions of racism coming from senior ministers. Valda Lawrence said about who look like Jagdeo and who look like you and that kind of thing. That's inciting racism.
People can get jobs in this country on contracts.
Then Minister Keith Scott went and disparaged Amerindians and calling them names and all sorts of things.
They call them avaricious. They had too much land and they weren't to get any more.
So we have all these cases piling up. All these cases piling up. Nobody's being arrested for that. But the leader of the opposition, a former president, basically saying that, look, they're going to be illegal, reject them because they have no authority to come to you. That becomes a problem. This, though, Comrade Gail, I think they're afraid of the PPP. They're seeing the writing on the wall. That in the next elections, they're not going to win the elections. And they're afraid of that. And I think Mr. Jagdeo's meetings in New York and Washington and so on, it sent some shockwaves to them. So they saw what happened there, and they realized that, look, more and more we're losing support every single day. So I think that is the basis of the issues that they have.
I just want to remind the listeners, when we went out on March 22nd, we walked from Church Street, the opposition office, to in front of the Office of the President, Ministry of the Presidency now. We were on the side of the road opposite. The police told us to keep to that side of the road, and we went to that side of the road. But I remember when Mrs. Jagan was president, that the picketers went all on the bridge of the Office of the President, throwing, powder, saying they're bringing all sorts of chants and things to bring bad things to her to happen. This was supposed to be walking whatever you call it. What do you call it? Voodoo or so, I don't know. Black magic, whatever it was, some magic. But they were throwing white powder and throwing things and coconuts and all sorts of things onto the bridge of the Office of the President. No one came out and did anything to them. And so this is a PNC that was involved with an invasion, an attempt to invade the Office of the President, which led to a person's death and a person losing their eye in, what was it, 2002, right? 2002.
Yeah, 2002.
Right? That invasion of the Ministry of the Presidency or Office of the President. Maybe that's why they feel they have to put up this fortress now. That the same elements that they, what do you call, let the dogs loose in 2002, maybe those are the dogs they're afraid of now. And that's why they had to put up all these huge fortress of fence that you can't see in, and that brand new gates and everything, and security features to get into the Ministry of the Presidency. So these are all signs to me of this government being desperate, and that I am quite sure that the work we've been doing with the international community, and the fact that the international community and the diplomatic corps and others have been saying to uphold the Constitution of Guyana, uphold the laws of Guyana, to retain democratic rights, and to have free and fair elections. This is a common thread coming through the various agencies. And the fact that the work we've been doing with CARICOM leaders, with the bar associations, with the speakers, and the regional media, is to say to all, keep an eye on the Caribbean Court of Justice, how this case goes. And here is what we've said. We will abide by the ruling, even if it is not what we want. But we believe firmly that the ruling will be in our favor. And I think they know too, when they go to the Caribbean Court of Justice, just as we are cautiously saying there's a 50-50 chance, they know, though, better than us, I believe, that what happened here in Guyana could not happen at the Caribbean Court of Justice. The case is clear. You can't rewrite the Constitution. You can't make a new provision in the Constitution. Your judiciary has no right to do that. It is only Parliament that can do that. And therefore, our chances of winning at the Court of Appeal, at the CCJ, is also great. And don't remember, we have also the case with the unilateral appointment of Mr. Patterson for the head of GCOM, the chairman of GCOM. That's on the 8th of May. So I think this is a government that's getting really antsy. They're really getting nervous. They know too when they go into the communities. You see, it's one thing if they felt they had the support of the people. People are turned off. They've been betrayed by the promises. They've been betrayed. They've been ignored. Now, after 4 years, they're going into communities they never went in before, in the 4 years. They went in election time, rah, 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 we promise you this, we promise you that. And for 4 years, they're absent. Now they're running back in and saying, oh, we're going to find jobs for you. We're going to do this bridge. We're going to do this. These were things that were there all the time. It isn't that they didn't know about it, because part of their election campaign was to say the PPP wasn't doing these things. And they were going to come and do it. 4 years later, they've done nothing. And now they're going to make promises to people. And people are, in some cases, Guyanese are pretty polite people. They'll sit and listen and walk away. Others people say, we don't have time with this. We just don't have time to listen to this crap anymore. And so they know that the signals are there. I am hoping that the police force of our country, who I've always, regardless of weaknesses and vulnerabilities, and you have some of the bad boys and rogue cops every now and again, that I've always believed that the police force of Guyana have always, when they most needed to be, retain their professionalism. Retain their professionalism. And I refer back to 92 and other times when they were called on to take a partisan political line, when the PNC flags used to be flown at the police headquarters in Ivleri and Kampaya, Ghana, and all these places. I have always been impressed with the police force of our country, that at the most critical times, that they have remained professional and behaved professionally and followed the law of this country. And I'm hoping that in this instance, that the police do not take instructions from no Congress place, nobody at Congress place. The police must have a case that they believe is lawful or unlawful, and to deal with it appropriately. You know, so the police force must not be used as the Papa Doc and them in Haiti did, where they treated the police as, you know, the Tutomakut, who were the bad guys who went and did whatever Papa Doc wanted him to do, or what was Baby Doc who followed him. That the police must retain its professionalism, and where there are issues, that they have to deal with the law in an appropriate way.
I think too, Comrade Gail, one of the fundamental reasons they are reverting to this, and I think this clearly, the intentions of the PNC is to polarize this country.
Yes.
Because they realize they have absolutely nothing to present to the electorate.
Yeah.
They are going this route. As much as it's concocted, it has no basis. They're going this route to use racism somehow. I would want to believe
Just
to stir up so
Yeah.
that they can polarize this country. And and I think they're simply fearful of facing the electorate.
Yes.
What are they going to tell the people? What are they going to go and tell the young people now? Are we going to find jobs for you? They took 4 years to give them 126 jobs. 4 years. They had some big,
Youth fair.
Job fair the other day.
Yes.
And they said 700 people went there, but they're going to find 200 jobs for them. And we're still waiting to see where the 200 jobs coming from. So I think the problem here with the PNC, they're trying to polarize our people, and they're trying to move us even forward into dictatorship. Because we know in countries where you're seeing opposition leaders and politicians who are opposed to the actions of the government being thrown into prisons and all sorts of things. I think they somehow feel they can bring that to Guyana. But the people in Guyana are smart. And I want to speak directly to the people of this country. You're smart. You're seeing every day the actions of this government. You're seeing that they have failed miserably. The 100-day plan, it's probably about 1,500 days already since that 100-day plan, and they have achieved absolutely nothing. So they're going to go now, they're going to revert to racism to somehow try to divide us so that, people wake up all the fears. That is why they talk, always they talk a set of nonsense about the PPP, kill 400 young black guys and all sorts of things. Baseless. All of these arguments are baseless. What I want to do again, though, I want to show back that video, operator, once more, so that people can, those of you who just joined us can have a sense of what exactly Mr. Jagdeo said and the context in which he said it. Operator, I think all right, yes, that video once more.
I noticed a statement emanating from the government today complaining about my comments at Babujan, where I said that people after March 21st should chase them out of their communities. Let me make it clear, I stand by that statement. I've made it clear at Babujan that we're a party that does not believe in violence. We're not going to be burning people's buildings. We're not going to be beating people on the streets. But the government would become illegal after March 21st. And therefore, they'd no longer be ministers. When they come to the communities, whether it is in Berbice or Essequibo or in Linden or in South Georgetown or Agricola or in Enmore or Port Morant, the people of Guyana should treat them as illegal. I said they should walk behind them, chase them out of your communities, because it means they've been squatting in power and that they will be there unconstitutionally. I made it clear, whoever they are, every minister of the government, including President Granger and Prime Minister Nagamoto, because they no longer have the right to hold those titles anymore. And so I think that they're desperate, they're worried about it, how people will treat them after March 21st, the deserved treatment that they will get after March 21st. And that's not the end of it all, because there'll be much more that will happen. If they think they can continue to stay in power, disrespect our Constitution with impunity, and act as in a normal fashion, well, they have another thing coming. So I reiterate to the people of Guyana, across Guyana, people of every race and every religion should join us in a movement to chase them out of the communities that they come to. Thank you.
Welcome back, welcome back. Of course, again, for the second time you heard what Dr. Jagdeo said. All right, so what we're going to do, we have probably about 10 minutes or so. We're going to take some calls. The number to call is 233-2459. But I want to say to you, please, if you're going to come through and you want to make a contribution on the discussions we're having tonight about the PNC's plot to arrest the leader of the opposition, Dr. Jagdeo, on his return from overseas, a successful visit, by the way, overseas. Please, no threats. Don't come through with any threats. Don't come through with any racial or racist comments. Be respectful and make your contribution. And try to be as short as possible so that we can get as much calls in as possible. All right, I'll take the first call. Good evening.
Good night.
Hi, good evening, sir.
The first person we can do is change Jagdeo out.
I didn't hear that.
I said the first thing we can do is change Baron Jagdeo Yal out.
Okay.
BBCL.
Not a problem. Thank you. Thank you for coming through.
Good.
Good. Yes, so that's okay. It's a democratic right. If you're not satisfied, you go ahead. Once there is no violence, I hope the PNC is going to tell their supporters not to be violent as well. Good evening. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening. I think we didn't get that one there. Yeah, so,
Well, in fact, we are not in government. We're the opposition. So, what are you going to do? Chase the opposition out now? I mean, that's a rather absurd statement by the person.
Good evening.
Hey, good evening.
Hi, good evening, sir.
Yes, I look at the program was coming now, very good. Keep up the good work. And based on what the last caller said, we'll take on them. You can't stop them type of behavior. They're from the 60s, the 90s, whatever. They're up to this kind of these. They have a kind of something embedded in them. Anyway, on behalf of Comrade Jagdeo, we do wish him well. And whatever they're trying to do to have any kind of fear, drive fear people, the time for that done. The time for those things finish. So no intimidation mustn't be allowed for our Guyanese citizens to be afraid of anybody. Okay?
Thanks.
We need to be strong and cooperate as Guyanese.
Thanks for coming
Thank
through.
you.
Thanks for coming
Very
through.
good. Thank you.
Yes, and that's that's the mature thinking that we have now as Guyanese. No longer are we focusing on what was happening before. Good evening.
Good night.
Hi, good night, sir.
Is the right thing that Jagdeo should have changed it?
I didn't hear that.
I said the right thing that Jagdeo should have been changed them for truth.
All right, thanks for coming through.
Thank you.
Yes. So the number to call is 233-2459. We want to hear from you this evening, your thoughts, because this what is happening. It's not. It's like you said. It's unheard of in our country.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening. I don't think I should continue showing what Mr. Jagdeo say. Stop that, because all these things inciting a lot of violence and all these things. I think you should show that and do what you have to do or say what you have to say.
Which part of it's inciting violence, though?
Because Jagdeo needs to be chased out.
Okay, so which part of what he said incited violence?
Yes, because he said chase the president, the thing. But like if the president is a little boy.
No, he said chase them when they were illegal.
If you continue to tell someone to chase it, it's going to cause problems. It's going to continue, and the next party is going to chase, and it's going to be chase and cause violence. So I think you should stop these things. Mr. Chair is a big woman. She's in the government alongside, and she should stop these things. She's a big woman. Stop doing false nonsense.
Thanks for coming
Thank
through.
you.
Thanks for
As
coming
a person who has been chased over the years by the PNC and tormented and accused from a racial point of view, and as a woman, I know what it's like to be chased. And I know what it's like to be chased not peacefully, but with violence in mind. And I was also a victim of House of Israel beatings when we were chased. And so that is not what we're talking about in the PPP. It was during the period of the government being illegal, and when they come to you, you tell them you don't want to hear them and to leave your communities. There's nothing inciting about that, madam. It's a different thing when you're surrounded by a mob that wants to beat you up and burn your vehicle. That's not what we're talking about in the PPP. Never have and never will. So that the Granger and the Nagamutu was specifically Prime Minister and President in relation to them in a period whereas March 21st they were illegal because they refused to obey the Constitution that said elections within 3 months or an extension by Parliament with 2/3 majority. The President refused to call a date for elections. GCOM refused to prepare for elections. And so as March 21st, midnight, there was no further constitutional cloak or cover available to the president of this country, Mr. Granger. And therefore, Mr. Jagdeo said that they were no longer legal. And when they come to communities, tell them, leave, go out, you know. And so in the communities, that's not inciting violence. And I gave the example. When Mrs. Lawrence went recently to Port Morant, she was greeted by sugar workers and other people raising their concerns. Nobody was violent to Mrs. Lawrence. Nobody. And in fact, she didn't even have the decency to go up to the protesters and say, you know, let's talk. What are your problems? I've been in protests where there've been a lot of violence, and I've talked to the picketers and the protesters and tried to resolve their concerns. And yes, I have had that experience in the midst of violence. And so Mrs. Lawrence ignored them and went on with this masquerade of recommissioning a hospital that was commissioned years ago as if it was something brand new, and it was second-hand up new. And so don't tell us about violence. Nobody on the PPP side is advocating violence. We are talking about peaceful protest. And the example I gave earlier was that on March 22nd, when in fact the government was illegal for 16 hours, we had 10 protests across the country, every single region, including Linden, including Region 4 and Georgetown and Region 8, Mahdia and Batika and Maruka and all these places, and they were all peaceful. People carried their placards, they had their peaceful pickets stickers on, they carried their banners, they marched, they chanted, and they went home. Not one report by the police of any misbehavior, of anybody doing anything that was unlawful, illegal, or violent. And so we continue to stand by the fact that there's nothing that we're doing that is insightful, and there's nothing that is inciting the population of this country.
All right.
What the government is doing, I'll add this, Eddie, they, by this act of plotting and planning to arrest the leader opposition, that is an act of inciting. May not be an act of racial inciting, but it's an act of inciting politically the population of this country. And the language that we've been using from December 21st has been one of moderation, and we've even gone that far to say, when the results of the Caribbean Court of Justice comes out, even if it is not how we think it should be and we're unhappy with it, we will abide by the Caribbean Court of Justice ruling. I wonder if the PNC, APNU, AFC, if the Court of Appeal, the Caribbean Court of Justice rules in our favor, if they will be peaceful on the roads of Georgetown. I want to see it. I want to see it.
Thank you very much.
And the last point I want to say is to the policemen who I've worked with, many of you over the years, as a Minister of Home Affairs. And I'm appealing to you to be professional, to follow the law. And don't be used by Congress Place. They offered you big salary increases. You never got it. Your 13-month a year you used to get never came after 2015. And so do not fall prey to politicians using you for partisan positions. You are police, be professional and do your work professionally. And recognize, as you advised me many times when I was Minister of Home Affairs, of what certain actions could have relay and other effects. This act by the government, if they continue with it, and this program hopes that they will listen tonight to some level of saneness and not go in this direction, so that, but if they proceed, they are in fact the inciters, not the PPP.
All right, thank you very much, Comrade Gail. I know we are almost out of time. So quickly, before we wrap this up, I just want to say that the information that we have is that Congress Place is somehow trying to instruct the police to arrest the leader of the opposition when he returns to the country from his overseas. He had a very some fruitful engagements overseas. On what grounds we don't know, but we want Guyanese to monitor this, to be watchful of this, and to see exactly the actions of this government. If anybody is inciting, if anybody is trying to divide us, then it is the PNC and those sitting at Congress Place. So as Guyanese, let us unite and reject any single attempt by this PNC to divide us and to throw us further into a state of dictatorship. We should not allow, we should not accept that. Until next week, we want to say thank you very much, and of course, continue to monitor social media, the television, and see what is happening, and we're going to continue to bring you as much information as possible on the developments regarding this. Teixeira, thanks for coming.
Thank you
this
very
evening.
much. Thank you very much. Good
Bye for
night,
now.
everybody.